The day my grandson looked me in the eye and said, "Grandpa, you're just a backup parent until Dad comes back." I just nodded, poured him another glass of orange juice, and quietly decided this would be the last morning they'd wake up under my roof. By sundown, their forever home wasn't theirs anymore. And they had no idea who now owned it. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I was halfway through buttering toast when 8-year-old Liam blurted it out, his voice casual in that way kids have when they're repeating something they don't fully understand. The smell of coffee hung in the air, the heater clicking quietly in the corner. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. His father, my son, was halfway around the world, deployed in a place where the nights never really got dark. For the past 7 months, I'd been the one holding this house together, paying every bill before it was late, packing lunches with little notes inside, making sure Liam's soccer cleats were clean and dry for Saturday games. Every night, I was the one tucking him in, reading him chapters from the same adventure book his dad had loved as a boy. "Who told you that, kiddo?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even as my hand froze mid-swipe with the butter knife. "Mom," he said between bites, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "She says you're just filling in. When Dad comes home, you'll go back to your little apartment." My little apartment. The phrase landed harder than it should have. The one I'd sold, along with half the furniture and most of my tools, 2 years ago to pay off this very mortgage, after my son's hospital bills nearly swallowed him whole. The one I gave up because they'd asked me to. Because, we're family, Dad, and this will be our home. I'd traded my independence for the promise of belonging. I'd thought it meant something. But now, hearing my grandson repeat her words so matter-of-factly, I realized I'd been nothing more than a placeholder in their plans. From the kitchen window, I saw her, Melissa, standing in the driveway with one hip cocked, phone pressed to her ear, pacing tight little circles like she was orchestrating a corporate takeover. Even from here, I could read the set of her jaw, the clipped nods, the way she gestured with her free hand as if she were closing some high-stakes deal. She'd moved into my son's life right after the accident that had left him with months of recovery ahead. I'd wanted to believe her sudden devotion was genuine, that she was the kind of woman who could stand by him through the worst. But from day one, I'd seen the truth behind the smiles. Melissa measured people by their financial output, and if you couldn't be quantified in dollars, you were of no use to her. Her thank yous were like rare coins, precious in theory, but never actually spent. Gratitude was not her language, entitlement was. That night, I lay awake in the dark, the ceiling fan spinning slow and steady above me, casting lazy shadows on the walls. Sleep never came. Instead, every memory of Melissa's sly comments drifted in, uninvited and sharp as broken glass. "Have you thought about downsizing now that you're retired? You know, the house technically belongs to me and Jason. You'd probably be happier in a smaller place, less to clean." Always delivered with that trademark half-smile, the one that made it sound like a harmless joke. Except it wasn't a joke. It was a soft, persistent pressure, chipping away at my place in this home I'd paid for, repaired, and kept standing through storms both literal and financial. I realized then that Melissa never said anything without purpose. Every word was a seed planted in fertile ground, waiting for the right season to sprout. The next morning, while Melissa was at her yoga class and Liam at school, I sat at my desk and stared at the file cabinet. A thin layer of dust coated the metal drawers, dust I knew she'd made passive-aggressive comments about before. I still remembered the first time we met. My son had just come home from the hospital, pale and weak, still learning to walk without the crutches. Melissa had swept into the room like she owned it, carrying a tray of soup from some trendy organic place I'd never heard of. "Hi, you must be Jason's dad," she'd said, her eyes doing a quick scan of my worn sweater, the frayed cuffs, the scuffed leather boots. She'd smiled, but it wasn't warmth, it was evaluation. I could almost hear the mental checklist being ticked: modest house, no visible luxury items, probably on a fixed income. By dessert that evening, she'd already managed to steer the conversation toward property values in the neighborhood. "It's such a shame when people hold on to houses too long," she'd said lightly, swirling her wine. "The market changes so fast. You can lose out on so much equity." It was the same tone she'd use years later when suggesting I'd downsize. Not advice. Not even conversation. Just planting seeds. Now, sitting at my desk, I pulled open the bottom drawer and reached for the thick brown envelope labeled in my late wife's tidy handwriting, "Property deed, joint ownership." Maria had always been the practical one. She'd once told me over morning coffee, "Don't mix sentiment with signatures." I'd laughed at the time, thinking she was talking about friends who loaned money without contracts. I ignored that advice when I co-signed this house, thinking that family meant trust. But I hadn't ignored her other lesson, the one she repeated whenever life blindsided us: always have a backup plan. I ran my fingers over the crisp paper inside the envelope, the legal language dry but comforting. Melissa thought the house was hers and Jason's, but her name had never been anywhere near the deed. She didn't know about the clauses Maria and I had insisted on when we first helped buy it. She didn't know I could sell it without so much as asking her permission. And in that moment, the backup plan stopped being theory. It became a mission. I didn't waste time. The longer I thought about Melissa's smug little smile, the more I worried I'd lose my nerve, and this was no time for hesitation. At 9:15 a.m., I picked up the phone and called Frank Dwyer. Old Army buddy, now a real estate attorney with a reputation for getting things done quietly. "Frank," I said when he answered, "I need to transfer a property fast. Clean, legal, no loose ends." There was a pause, then a low chuckle. "Who's the unlucky party?" I gave him the address. "Oh. Jason's place," he said slowly. "Thought you co-owned that with him?" "I do. That's why I can sell it without Melissa knowing until the ink's dry." By 9:40, Frank had emailed me the preliminary paperwork. I printed it, signed where he told me to sign, and scanned it back within the hour. He promised to have a buyer lined up by tomorrow, someone cash-ready who wouldn't flinch at a quick closing. At 10:30, I made my second call, this one to the couple I'd met last year when they'd been desperate to buy in the area but got outbid by a developer. They'd told me to call if I ever heard of a place opening up. "It's available now," I told them. "You'll want to move fast." By 11:15, they'd wired a deposit to Frank's office. The house my son thought of as his castle, Melissa's trophy, was officially in motion to belong to someone else. I leaned back in my chair, the first real smile in months tugging at my face. Melissa's yoga session would end in 20 minutes. She'd drive home humming along to her playlist, thinking the world was hers. She had no idea that by the end of the week, she'd be the one looking for a place to downsize. By 9:40, Frank had emailed me the preliminary paperwork. I printed it, signed where he told me to sign, and scanned it back within the hour. He promised to have a buyer lined up by tomorrow, someone cash-ready who wouldn't flinch at a quick closing. At 10:30, I made my second call, this one to the couple I'd met last year when they'd been desperate to buy in the area but got outbid by a developer. They'd told me to call if I ever heard of a place opening up. "It's available now," I told them. "You'll want to move fast." By 11:15, they'd wired a deposit to Frank's office. The house my son thought of as his castle, Melissa's trophy, was officially in motion to belong to someone else. I leaned back in my chair, the first real smile in months tugging at my face. Melissa's yoga session would end in 20 minutes. She'd drive home humming along to her playlist, thinking the world was hers. She had no idea that by the end of the week, she'd be the one looking for a place to downsize. The next day, I kept my routine exactly the same. Toast, coffee, morning drop-off for Liam. If Melissa noticed anything different, she didn't say. But at 3:15 p.m., when I picked Liam up from school, she was already in the driveway. Sunglasses on, hair pulled into that perfectly messy bun that probably took 30 minutes to arrange. "Hey," she said, stepping out of her SUV. "I was just going over the utility bills. Looks like the water company sent a past due notice." "That so?" I asked, handing Liam his backpack and telling him to head inside. "Yeah," she said, crossing her arms. "I thought you said you'd handle that stuff while Jason's away." "I did," I replied evenly. "And I'm handling it now." Her eyes narrowed, like she was trying to read something on my face. "Good. I'd hate for the house to start slipping just because," she trailed off, letting the sentence hang there like bait. "Just because what?" I asked, taking a slow step closer. She smiled, thin and cold. "Just because you're getting older, that's all. Some people can't keep up with the responsibility." I let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. "Responsibility," I said finally, "isn't about who's on the property. It's about who owns it." For just a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes, confusion, maybe even worry, but then she laughed it off and turned toward the door. That was fine. Let her laugh. In 48 hours, it would choke her. The following afternoon, I was in the garage oiling the hinges on my old tool chest when Melissa came in without knocking. She leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, her perfume cutting through the smell of metal and grease. "Liam told me you've been looking at houses online," she said, her tone light but her eyes sharp. I wiped my hands on a rag. "Maybe I have." She tilted her head. "Planning to move out?" "You know, give us some space when Jason comes home." I closed the tool chest with a solid metallic thud. "Funny thing about space, Melissa, it's usually something people earn. Not something they demand from the person keeping the lights on." She took a step forward, a smile twitching at the corner of her mouth. "You make it sound like we're ungrateful. I've always appreciated what you've done for us." "Have you?" I asked, locking eyes with her. "Because I can't remember the last time you said it." She broke the stare first, looking down at her manicured nails. "Well, I just assumed you knew." I let the silence hang until she shifted uncomfortably. "Melissa, I've known a lot of things for a long time. And you're about to find out one of them." I walked past her and into the house, leaving the faint smell of inevitability behind. Saturday morning, the moving truck rolled up at 9:02 a.m., its diesel engine rumbling like distant thunder. Two men in blue shirts hopped out, one of them holding a clipboard. Melissa was in the kitchen, still in her robe, scrolling on her phone. She glanced out the window, frowned, and went to the front door. "Excuse me," she called, stepping onto the porch. "You've got the wrong address." The taller mover checked his papers. "No, ma'am. This is 423 Willow Lane. We've got instructions to start loading up today. New owners want to be in by Monday." Her laugh was high and brittle. "New owners? This is our house." I came up behind her, coffee mug in hand. "No, Melissa. It was your house. It's theirs now." She spun around, eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" I took a slow sip. "Check the deed." "Well, actually, don't bother. Your name's never been on it. And as co-owner, I sold it yesterday. Full cash offer, clean title, no contingencies." Her face went pale. "You can't do that." "I just did." She opened her mouth, closed it, then jabbed a finger toward the movers. "Jason will never forgive you for this." I stepped closer, my voice dropping. "Jason will forgive me when he sees the full picture. I've kept this roof over your head for years, Melissa. Paid every bill while you played Lady of the Manor. And now? You told my grandson I was just a placeholder. That I'd go back to my little apartment. Well, now we both know the truth, this was never your home. And starting Monday, it won't be mine either. But it sure as hell won't be yours." Her hands shook, whether from rage or panic, I couldn't tell. Where are we supposed to go? I handed her the coffee mug. Maybe you can downsize. I hear it's all the rage. The movers started up the porch steps, and Melissa stood frozen, robe cinched tight, watching the life she thought she owned get packed into cardboard. Melissa was still standing frozen on the porch when a car screeched into the driveway. Jason stepped out, still in his fatigues, duffel slung over one shoulder. He'd come home early. Dad? What's going on here? His voice carried that sharp edge I'd heard in combat briefings, half command, half confusion. Melissa ran to him like a drowning woman to a lifeboat. Jason. He's selling our house. You have to stop him. I didn't move from where I stood. Correction, my house. Our house, Jason. Yours and mine. Never hers. And I sold it. Jason's brow furrowed. Why? Why would you do something like that? I set my coffee mug down on the railing, letting the silence stretch. 7 months, Jason. 7 months I've kept this place afloat while you were away. Paid the bills. Took care of Liam. Fixed the furnace. Kept food on the table. I glanced at Melissa, then back at him. And in return, I get told by my own grandson that I'm just a placeholder until you get back. That I'll go back to my little apartment. Jason's eyes flicked to Melissa. You told him that? She crossed her arms, defensive. I was just trying to explain. I cut her off. No, you were trying to make sure he knew I didn't belong here. You wanted me out, and now you've got your wish. Jason stepped closer, his voice low. Dad, you could have talked to me. We could have worked something out. I met his gaze, steady and unblinking. I've been working something out for years, son. Quietly. Sacrificing so you could have this place. But somewhere along the way, you let someone else decide my worth in this family. You didn't stop her. And now. I'm done. He opened his mouth to speak, but the movers were already carrying out the first box. The sound of packing tape ripping across cardboard filled the space between us. Jason, I said finally, I hope you find a good home for Liam. But it won't be here. This house isn't yours to lose anymore, it's already gone. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time since he was a boy, I saw shame in his eyes. Melissa looked away, jaw clenched, as if bracing for a blow that never came, because it already had. 2 weeks later, I stood on the porch of a small cedar cabin overlooking a quiet stretch of the river. It wasn't big, just one bedroom, a kitchen that could barely fit 2 people, and a living room with a wood stove that popped and crackled in the evenings. But it was mine. Paid in full. The air smelled of pine and cold water. Out here, no one cared whose name was on a deed, or whether I was just filling in until someone more important came along. A battered shoebox sat on the porch railing beside me, filled with letters and drawings Liam had made over the years, crayon rockets, fishing trips, crooked stick figures with Grandpa written above them in uneven block letters. I kept them close, a reminder that he was the one part of all this I'd never wanted to lose. I knew Jason would call eventually. Maybe he'd come by with an apology, maybe not. But some bridges, once burned, make better light than shelter. As the sun dipped low over the water, I poured myself a cup of coffee and watched a heron glide silently across the surface. The movers had taken the house from me, yes, but they'd also taken the weight I'd been carrying for far too long. Some losses hurt. Some set you free. And some do both at the same time.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.